one has created, a lot of excitement and maybe a little bit of confusion, and that is about PDM standard. And so some questions are, how does that affect workgroup PDM, and what does it mean to have PDM standard? What's it capable of? What does that mean with enterprise PDM, and now that becoming PDM professional? So we really wanted to have a webinar to address some of these questions, and of course we wanted to have some fun with the time of year, and connect it to Santa's workshop. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Mark Goche. I'm the sales manager here at Javelin, and Eric Van Essen is our director of products, and Eric's going to take you through the webinar. We do have a few sort of polling questions that we want to ask as we go, but we're trying to have some fun with it, and again trying to really address some of the concerns and really explain that it's a great opportunity for both our customers as well as Javelin. So go ahead, Eric, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds great. Well, a little bit of an agenda for today. With our Christmas theme, we're going to be focusing on Santa's workshop. So Santa had 3 top Christmas wishes, and we just wanted to show a quick live demonstration about how the elves are using PDM and how they're planning on using it even better in 2016. We'll answer some key facts and some FAQ related to PDM Standard Workgroup. And most importantly, what we wanted to do is get everybody together as we're heading into the new year very shortly. We want to make sure we all have a great plan to be successful and get the most out of the new release in this product. As Mark mentioned, we do have a few polls that we'll do, so I'll ask one of them right now. And I'm curious what you see as your largest risk in engineering. And we'll see if it matches up with what Santa told us. So if you could answer that would be fantastic. And it helps us guide some of the content that we're going to walk through today. As we're going through the webinar here as well, feel free to ask any questions. So there is a question panel in the right side in that panel for the webinar. So you can ask questions, and with Mark here next to me, we'll do our best to address them as we go through.
Wow, it looks like actually every single person almost answered that poll question. That's great.
Perfect. I'm just closing it up. Thank you. All right. So the top 2 actually are coincidentally, actually by no surprise, completely in line with what Santa was wishing. So there's actually 3 wishes. The first one came out of Santa's design department. So talking with the elves, they wanted to design toys together more effectively. They wanted to make sure that they weren't overwriting files, losing files, and breaking references, and they just wanted to make sure they knew they were always working with the latest information. So what we're going to do is just hop into SOLIDWORKS here, and you can see that we're working on a new Lego man here. And what I wanted to highlight is something very subtle but simple but very impactful, is that while you're working out of PDM, you'll notice that you have the ability for multiple team members to work at this top level assembly, and it very clearly highlights when there's changes in that design that somebody else might have updated. So you can see I'm working on version 1 out of 2. All I need to do is get the latest version of that head, and you can bring it right into the design. So you can see that the first head of this Lego man did not have a hat on it, and there was a design change with that hat. So, very, very simple, but that's kind of I wanted to keep it simple today, that is hugely impactful to the clients that are using PDM, is just coordinating multiple designers to work on a toy or whatever the heck they're designing together. Wish number 1, check. So this wish actually came from Santa. So Santa was hoping, well, I have my different design departments and manufacturing departments and everybody working together. He'd like a little bit more visibility on his elves. So he was hoping to track the changes that are being made to the files and make sure that they're all working productively together. So I'm going to show you again in SOLIDWORKS just how simple that can be. First up, I'll show you that my name is next to the top-level assembly, so I'm working on that guy. And if you wanted to start working on a file, it really is just as simple as going to the EPD, or in this case EPDM, but it's going to be PDM Standard menu if I at 2016, and check out the file. And you'll notice my name going right next to that. So now I have that file ready for writability. Okay. Let's go make a design change. So I'm going to go into my design library and bring out a sketch here. So we'll just drag and drop that on. And I'm going to turn this Lego man into having an ugly Christmas sweater. We'll see how this turns out. So we'll just do a quick cut. Whoops, 1 millimeter, like so. Maybe so it's a little bit more obvious, we'll change the color as well. And so, all right, so we made a design change. We'll close that up. And at this point, what I'll do is I'll check in the whole assembly. And because it's so integrated with SOLIDWORKS, you can actually just use mouse gestures to say added new sweater. Should probably put an ugly Christmas sweater there, but that's probably enough to go communicate with Santa the design changes that I made as an elf. So now you'll notice that there's a new version of the assembly, a new version of the files, but to a user, it actually was quite simple. One other thing that I changed as well was the drawing. I'll point that out. So that drawing is now updated with the Christmas sweater and that as well. So into Windows Explorer is where the vault resides. You'll notice that I have the latest file set that everybody can go get view access to if they have the right permissions. And they have the ability to go and get a version before it got the ugly Christmas sweater and hat added. So you can also see that in the history, exactly who updated what as they went through. So you can see date and timestamps and version control. So all of that is automatically done, and in a nutshell, that makes Santa very happy. Would you agree, Mark?
Absolutely, for sure. Why don't we throw out another poll question at this time, Eric?
Great idea. Yeah, let's do it. So we'll bring out the polls. So I'm curious about how you manage your revisions today. So there's lots of ways to manage them. A lot of customers out there are using Workgroup, and they're curious about what the transition plan should be. And then obviously there's a lot of people who do it manually in Windows Explorer or other systems. If you have something that's not Workgroup or Enterprise PDM, the other system, now that PDM Standard is part of the SOLIDWORKS offering, it should be a serious consideration to see whether this can do the trick. So appreciate all the poll results, and it looks like the majority of the people here are Workgroup PDM users. So great timing, because now is really when you should be planning on planning for when the transition makes sense. All right. So that brings me to the wish that came out of Santa's manufacturing department. So there's a whole team of elves that are building these toys, not just doing the design work. And the biggest wish that they had, which I don't think is any surprise, was the biggest wish out of everybody that's attending this webinar, was whether they can manufacture or make sure that they're manufacturing to the correct revision. So that is, by far the biggest goal that our customers have when it comes to PDM. So I'll walk you through a little bit about how we make sure that happens. And it's a combination of different tools. First tool is, it's quite common to force people, especially individuals that are working in the manufacturing, to always work with the latest. So in this case, I have the permissions to roll back because for my job, it might require that. But you can make it so that everybody always works with the latest data. The other thing that comes into play is a process. So you can see that all of these files right now are ELF's work in progress. So I want to review these files. And what I can do is right-click and pass this file for Santa's approval. So it's very common practice to not let the manufacturing department see the files unless Santa has approved it. So you can click on that, You can say, please review. And you can pass all of the files together if you like, which I'm doing in this case, or you can pass just one of them, but in this case I'm going to pass all of them. And you can see all of these files are waiting for Santa's approval. So if Santa's working somewhere else, and he's working within his new PDM vault, he can look very quickly for all SOLIDWORKS drawings. So you can just do SLD DRW and see all SOLIDWORKS drawings, and you can filter those by status. So you can see wait for all the files that are waiting for Santa's approval. So he can approve those, or he can review those, and he can actually add his comments. And then what's a very common thing to do is to have the title block automated. So you can see that right now it's drawn by myself, and I'm still logged in as myself. I probably should have logged in as Santa just to really hit the point home. But what I can do is approve this for ELF production. You can actually prompt Santa for his password, and I'll do that, and you can see the status will change on that file to approved, and you'll notice that the title block can automatically update. So you can see that it's approved by today's date, and you can see that the Rev A was automatically added. That was blank before. Okay. Now to hit the point home, really what we're trying to do is make sure that the manufacturing department cannot see this file if it's not approved. And the best way to show that is really showing what this vault looks like from production ELF. So I'm just going to log off this vault as myself, and I'm going to log back in as a production ELF, like so. And what you'll notice is that when I log in as production ELF, I have a very limited view to the files. So you can see that I can only see the project data, and when I drill in, I can only see the files in that project data that are approved for ELF production. If I probably should have only approved one file, that really hits that point home, but what I can do is browse to maybe do that same search, or actually have different searches too. So probably shouldn't have approved all of them so you didn't see that, but I think you get the point that they can only see, production ELF can only see the latest released revision, and that's really the key that, that is impacting successful engineering firms and successful manufacturing companies with how they're working with their data. Okay, so wish number 3, PDM Standard can do this. Everything that I've shown today is all part of PDM Standard. All right. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the right, and we'll do our best to address them throughout. And we'll definitely go through and make sure we get all of them at the end. Just wanted to summarize that PDM Standard to us is really about eliminating your risk. So there's risk related to improper revision control, and the risk related to the wrong revision being used. There's risk related to when multiple designers are trying to coordinate together, either overwriting files or working on the wrong files. So those risks are eliminated. And there's also risks and frustration related to misplaced information. And by having a nice database that tracks all of the file data and allows you to instantly search and find what you need, that frustration gets reduced to almost zero, and it really eliminates that risk as well. So that's really what PDM Standard's about. Actually, I think that's probably a good time for another poll question. So let's do another one of those. So the question here is, when would you likely implement PDM Standard? So we'll go through some of these key FAQs, and ideally we ask all of these questions at the end, but because you might not know based on as we're not through the content yet, but it would be great to get your feedback and what your gut feel is so far. So go through that, and we'll do our best to keep trucking along here. All right, thanks everybody for voting. All right. Right, so I just wanted to go through some key facts about PDM Standard and Workgroup PDM. So I'll just go through these fairly quickly, and we'll summarize later on again. But I just want to I'll say a few times throughout this webinar that it really makes sense for us to plan with you individually as a customer of ours to figure out what are the most impactful things and what plan makes sense for you. But some things to be aware of. PDM Standard licensing is included with SOLIDWORKS Professional and Premium. In order to get the license file, you just need to put a support request in. The best way to do that is just through Javelin's website under support. You can pick PDM Standard as the product for support and just say, I'd like my license file generated. So we can log in and get that set up for you. It's actually, if you're a floating license already, it just gets added to your existing pool. But we do need to activate it for you, and we're only going to do that if asked, because we want to make sure that we're working with you the right way. And so the next one is what's happening with or what's the functionality. So we want to make sure, as you saw today, it's based on Enterprise PDM functionality. So it's really just a trimmed back version of Enterprise PDM with really focusing on the fundamentals, revision, basic searching, and coordination. Those are kind of the key risks. Like the #1 reasons why customer implement ePDM actually are part of standard. And there's lots of reasons still to implement ePDM, which is now rebranded as PDM Professional. It's built as a function or an extension of Windows Explorer. So that's kind of about the product. So it's really easy to start using. It's something that you guys should all be aware of. If you're using Workgroup PDM today, you're probably familiar with the headaches involved with getting new users ramped up and familiar with it. It can be a little bit cumbersome to get people used to it, and we find that with PDM Standard or Enterprise PDM, it becomes much easier. It's based on SQL Express, so it uses the free version of SQL. It does not come with SQL Standard the way that PDM Professional now does. So there are some limitations there for performance, but SQL Express is quite capable. PDM Standard will replace Workgroup PDM by 2018. So this is probably their biggest question out of all the Workgroup clients out there, is when will Workgroup be unsupported? So Workgroup PDM is still going to be supported for this release and the next release, 2017. The 2018 release in 2 years from now is not going to include Workgroup PDM. So in order to upgrade to 2018, you will need to have migrated already to PDM Standard. So this allows everybody, or for 2 years, correct, or PDM Professional. It obviously doesn't have to be PDM Standard. There are a lot of limitations to PDM Standard. I'm not going to run through them all today, but one of the big ones is limitations to the workflow. So you're only allowed one workflow, and with 10 states in that workflow. But it will work quite well for smaller design teams from a performance standpoint, especially if they're just doing SOLIDWORKS data. So there's many reasons why you'd consider PDM Pro if you're doing more, if you'd like to revision control more than SOLIDWORKS data. And just to reiterate that a lot of the largest risks are mitigated in Santa's workshop with this PDM Standard. So, right. Anything to include there, Mark? Or is that that's kind of the big ones I want to just get out there?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the real important ones is that Workgroup PDM is still available and usable until 2018. A lot of our customers are asking us, hey, can you come out and take a look at our vaults now, though? Because we don't want to add any more content, any more data to Workgroup, because then it's just going to make the migration larger when they do go to make that change. So we're working with a lot of our customers and scheduling them now to get out and take a look, and to really just to present options of how to do it and when to do it. And then there's some customers that say, hey, it's not going to be an issue. We're gonna use it right till 2018, and that's great. So every company is different, and we're certainly here to help and to work with you to make it as easy as possible.
Okay. Just had a quick question here about the workflow. So can I explain that a little bit more in depth, the one workflow and 10 statuses? So you saw the workflow I used for SANA to do the approval. That used 3 statuses. It was work in progress from an ELF, it was waiting for SANA's approval, and it was approved for production. So 3 is sometimes all you need, but it's very common for customers to grow that and try to keep, it depends on how complex your process is, because ideally you have a status for every key part to your process, okay? And it's also very common to have different file types follow different workflows, which is not possible with PDM Standard. The biggest use of that is if you do non-SOLIDWORKS files, such as Office documents, okay? Lots of other questions in there too, and I'll assure you I'll answer them all as I go. It's just tough to do it at the same time. Wanted to summarize just a few differences between PDM Standard and PDM Pro, just so we get that out there. The biggest reasons I see are right in the middle there, related to automation and standardization. So PDM Pro, based on workflow, can publish bill of materials, publish PDF drawings, and do a lot of automation in the back end. As well as automation of email notifications, and so there's lots of things to streamline your processes further and make them faster, and also standardizing. So I was working out of a project folder there. In PDM Standard, I would have to create that folder structure manually and put in the properties all manually. In PDM Pro, that can be done with a template, as well as creating files with templates and creating and automatically numbering them as well. Another big reason is for non-SOLIDWORKS file management. So if you're managing Office documents, AutoCAD drawings, or SOLIDWORKS Electrical is another example of this. There's lots of benefits of using PDM Pro with how you preview and work with the files and how you integrate directly with the tool. So those are the big ones. I'm not going to go too much detail over the other ones. Really what I wanted to do today is just try to summarize it at a high level. And to me, PDM Professional is really about team productivity. It's about reducing time and errors by automating and standardizing how the team is working. It's about scalable design workflows, so you can scale to multiple offices and bigger teams because of the infrastructure. And it's really about managing all your project information. So it's beyond the SOLIDWORKS data, electrical, DWG's, Office documentation. Those are the big heavy hitters. If those don't resonate with you, it's likely that we'd recommend starting with PDM Standard. If one of those, it only takes one of those to resonate with you to start building a positive ROI in my mind for PDM Professional. So
for sure. Can we go with another poll question?
Yeah. Yeah, we got another poll question here.
Great.
See how we're going through. So this one's really about implementing PDM Pro. So we'll ask this already. I mean, the answers might change later on after we talk through some stuff, but I would be curious whether you envision using our help, or whether it's something that you're going to try to take on yourselves. So it's always nice to be working with you the right way. So if you could fill it out as best you can, would be great. I know you don't have all the right information currently, so not too big of a problem either way. But it's just to help us as a conversation point to support you as best we can. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up this poll. All right. Thanks everybody for voting. We'll close that off. Perfect. Thanks. And that actually seems like a pretty even spread in the different areas. So I appreciate your feedback, and yeah, like I said, we're obviously happy to support you in this best way we can. The one thing that I would throw in there is that what we can't do is support implementations through the support lines. We can answer questions, but they have to be one-off questions. It's not, what we can't do is tie up our application engineers that are supporting our customers on for like a full morning as you're answering, 20, 30 questions. Well, to me, that means that you probably just needed somebody out there to go help you get it set up. Okay. So planning for a successful 2016. What are the key things that should be considered? So the key things are, where is your data stored today? So if you, so there's quite a few workgroup PDM users on this webinar, and there's a couple options we have to migrate workgroup PDM to PDM Standard or PDM Professional. And important questions that we need to dig into is not only the amount of data and the details of your vault, we of course need that information, but some things that could simplify things a little bit is if we simplify it to only the latest, and maybe we end up dropping some of the information that maybe isn't properly utilized anyhow. A prime example being life cycle status. So it does take a significantly more effort if you're trying to get everything over. So if you're looking to get help bringing it over but want to minimize the cost and effort, we can look at ways to simplify what's really needed to get over to PDM Standard or Pro. Other things that might simplify it, it's very, in the past we've always done like test run migrations and planning and checking of data beforehand. It's time, and in reality it's very rare that there's anything major that comes out of that. So you might just go and say, you know what, let's just do a cutover date, transfer it over, and if there's errors, we go and fix it within PDM Standard or Pro on the other side. There's much less likely to be errors if you simplify what's brought over. Like really the errors are usually related to something subtle in the history or life cycle if you've changed how you used workgroup along like how in the past, and what it was set up like when it was first installed compared to now. Other key considerations are existing setup like custom properties, blocks. There's opportunities for cleaning data during migration that should be considered, and also looking at what files are stored. So all of those things are important considerations that we need to plan with you guys to make sure that we're as successful and as impactful as possible in 2016. Licensing is also a consideration. So as we announced many times this year already, PDM Standard licensing is included with SOLIDWORKS Professional and Premium. It's not compatible with PDM Professional licensing. It's a separate license pool, and so can't be used on a PDM Pro vault. So it depends on, you just need to consider what is your ultimate goal of where you want to be, and what makes sense, or what's the route that we should follow from a licensing standpoint. Do we need to upgrade SOLIDWORKS licenses to be at Pro level? Do we need to, or does it make sense to just invest in PDM Professional licensing? There is a lot of advantages, obviously, to using it that could contribute to a good business decision. And also, are you planning on distributing information? So do you see access to other people, or do you envision using it just for the native CAD files and storing your PDFs or other production data outside of the vault, which is, it's kind of, I wouldn't say 50-50. It's probably a little bit higher customers that are in the vault, but it is definitely not uncommon to publish outside the vault, just to help with a licensing standpoint. And the one thing I would say there is that you want to make sure that that's automated as best as possible, which would be part of PDM Pro. So it's there's other ways to go about it too, but it's really you want to be thinking about the whole picture of how data is flowing around. So another important question is, what's your desired vault structure? So as you're setting up a new vault, you have an opportunity to make some decisions that will have a really long-term impact. So what you do today as you're setting up PDM Standard will affect how your vault will behave and what's going to be in your vault in the history, many, many years from now. So the question should be, does it make sense to get some of our help? For those of you that said they're likely doing it themselves, does it make sense to get at least a little bit of help to be as impactful as possible? I would argue that it likely does, with the experience that we have with setting up customers. Another important structure is on like whether you're more product focused or project focused. So that's kind of the two main structures that we help customers out with at the bottom there. But it can change by customer every single time. So it makes sense to plan what makes sense for you and to use some of our experience and what you need out of it. Anything to add, Mark?
No, I would have just said, you know, the good news is from that poll question, there were very few folks that wanted to sort of try and tackle this on their own. So that's a good sign. I highly recommend, you know, leveraging Javelin's experience with ePDM and PDM Professional to help you set up those vaults properly. And you know, it's your data is your most important asset, other than of course the people. You know, once you do have it set up, and you start adding data, it's very difficult to go back and make changes, and the headaches are huge. So it really needs to be emphasized that when you are setting up your vault for the first time, or in a migration for, you know, the second time, to make sure you do it properly the first time.
Yep. Yeah. Good point for sure. So timing is also a consideration. So we do have a poll question there that will help guide this a little bit. But we just need to make sure we make a solid plan with what are the key things that need to happen during this upgrade and implementation, and make sure we plan it in a way that minimizes downtime and makes you guys as successful as possible. So that's, you know, really in a summary where we're at today. Some of the key recommendations. We are going to answer a bunch of questions here, but I'll just summarize it with really what I'll consider your Christmas shopping list to get ready for 2016. And you know, step one, if you are considering PDM Standard instead of PDM Pro, would be we need to get your license file generated. So you can request that through support. You can see a little screenshot there of the drop down of PDM Standard. That's the best way to do it, right through our website. If you want help determining which is the best path for you for PDM Standard or Pro, because it's definitely less effort to go from work or from Standard to Professional than it is from Workgroup to the new PDM system, but it's still effort. So it makes sense that if there's a chance of PDM Pro being desired within the year, there's a likelihood that it makes sense to do it, and we can help determine that. Regardless of whether that makes sense, we can still help determine what the key benefits would be to your organization by filling in this PDM requirement survey. So I'm going to make one thing I want to do is send that survey as a link out to everybody. So I apologize if we're sending you too much email on this event, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to fill that out and use that information to help you with a plan. You know, regardless of what your plan is for 2016, I highly recommend to at least have an initial meeting with us to discuss options and to figure out, you know, what makes sense for you, and you know, because there are different implementation options that we have at different price points. And you know, really our goal is always to be as impactful as possible with whatever amount of time or budget that you have to work with. And of course, create a plan specific to you. So that's, you know, really in a nutshell what it's all about. Do you have anything to add there, Mark?
No, that was great. Just the last poll question.
Right. So I'll say thank you, and we'll obviously answer some. Stick around to answer some of these questions, and we'll ask our last poll question. Very simple one, and curious whether this webinar was effective and helped answer the key questions that you had. Can we stop recording there? So we did. So hopefully